could call a meeting to order and we'll have a moment of reflection to begin with. Thank you. At this point in time, you can make a declaration of pecuniary interest or any point in time through the meeting should one arise. And then I have a motion for confirmation of the agenda. Now I do have 3 additions. One being 6.1 delegation on item 7.23, Scott Patterson Planning Consultants. One on 6.2 delegation on item 7.2.4. Dave Hannum, Senior Associate, Zelenka Priamo Limited, and item 13.1, closed session, a matter pertaining to solicitor advice / litigation with regards to public works. So if I could have a motion to approve the agenda as amended, that would be great. Councillor McKenzie and Councillor Kasenberg. Last chance for questions. Those in favor, that's carried. We're going to move on to consent agenda. And we have items 5.1 to 5.5 with the May 19th regular council minutes and the May 19th, 2022 special council minutes. Does anyone want to see anything pulled on the consent agenda? Not seeing any hands. I have a motion. Perth County Council receives the consent agenda items 5.1 to 5.5 and approves the May 19th, 2022 regular council minutes and the May 19th, 2022 special council minutes. Moved by Councillor Kellum, second by Councillor Wilhelm. Last chance for questions. Those in favor? That's carried. Moving on. Okay, so now we're into public meetings. So we're going to start with 6.1, and that is Scott Patterson Planning Group, and that's with regards to item 7.2.3, the listable ward official plan amendment 35. So we can get Scott up here. We'll be going.
Good morning.
Oh, there he is. He moves around the screen. Good morning, Scott. We're ready for your delegation.
Yeah, good morning, Council. Nothing further to add to the staff report that was prepared by Ms. McMullen regarding the official plan amendment for 650 Main Street in Lisbon. Really just here to answer any questions that may have arose from her staff report or from public comments. But again, here in full support and hoping the Council will support recommendations.
Okay, thank you, Scott. This is no real questions for council at this point, because we'll deal with this matter later on when we get to planning section. Okay, so you got nothing else to add? Okay, so we're going to move on to the next delegation. And that is Dave Hanna, Senior Associate, Zelenka Priamo. And that's item 7.2.4, application of plan of subdivision. Motions to receive the delegation. Oh, and just before we do that, we need a motion to receive the delegation from Scott Patterson. Moved by Councillor Wilhelm, second by Deputy Ward Nagats. Those in favor? That's carried. And if we can get, oh, there's Dave Hannon. Morning, Dave. We're ready for your delegation.
Excellent. Good morning, Ward and members of Council. Dave Hannum, I'm a Senior Associate Registered Professional Planner with Zelenka Priamo, London-based planning consultancy. We're the planning consultants for BNS Construction for the draft plan of subdivision application for 21 lots. It's item 7.24 on your agenda. I haven't prepared a formal presentation. I just wanted to provide a couple of quick comments and answer any questions that may pop up. But Since the public meeting back in February, we've been working diligently with staff to provide them with additional information, but particularly pertaining to the introduction of second dwelling units within this development. We have now provided staff with what we believe is the level of comfort they need to progress the application, and that obviously they concur with that because they're forwarding the application through today. We've had the opportunity to carefully review staff's report and the approval conditions, and we welcome the approval recommendation, and we're hopeful of a positive endorsement also from County Council today. From a land use planning policy perspective, the proposed development supported at all levels of provincial, county, and West Perth land use planning policies, and makes good land use planning sense. We note there's no objections from any of the public, and as such, we respectfully request that County Council supports staff's recommendation and approves the application at the appropriate time this morning. I'm happy to answer questions if you have any. That's it. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Dave. Anybody have any questions for Dave with regards to that? Probably not a whole lot yet till we get into it later on. Not seeing any hands go up. So I have a motion to receive the delegation from Dave Hanna, Senior Associate, Zelenka Priamo, on item 7.2.4. Moved by Councillor McKenzie, seconded by Deputy Warden Eggets. Those in favor? That's carried. Perfect. Thanks, Dave.
Thank you.
Okay, now we are moving on to 6.3. And I need a motion that regular council recess for the purpose of holding a planning public meeting at 9:07. Moved by Councillor Duncan, second by Councillor Wilhelm. Those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. So we're gonna in the public meeting here for the official plan amendment number 205, I believe it is. And I think, is it Melissa's coming on for this? Melissa? Yeah, I'm sure it's Melissa.
Good morning, everyone.
Morning, Melissa.
Morning.
So we're ready for the OPA 205.
Let me just share my screen, please.
Good catch. I said it must be cold where Melissa is.
What?
Be okay, Melissa, now. Sorry about that.
Okay, I can share it now.
Yeah.
My apologies. I haven't found time to change my background, actually. Okay, here it is. Does everyone see this?
Yes.
Okay. So this is an official plan amendment application pertaining to the land at 2518 Perth Road, 130 in Perth South. The owner has applied to sever surplus farm residents through consent B 3121. The accompanying OPA 205 proposes to create a site-specific policy applicable to the subject lands to permit severance of an existing surplus farm residence. The subject lands are within a predominantly agricultural area surrounded by large cash crop and livestock operations and approximately 3 kilometers north of the town of St. Mary's. The subject land has an area of approximately 42.55 hectares and is a corner lot within just over a kilometer frontage along Perth Road 130 and 420 meters on line 14. The property contains, like I said, an existing cash crop operation, silos and 2 barns that were previously used for livestock housing, but are currently used for agricultural related storage of machinery and tools. A single detached dwelling and various drive sheds and other accessory structures are located within the main farm cluster. A second dwelling is located which is a highlighted item on the screen. The second dwelling is located in the northeast corner of the property and is the subject of consent application B3121 and is proposed to be severed as a surplus farm residence. The property contains several designations: agriculture, approximately 35 hectares, natural resource environment, 1.6, which is the woodlot that you see in the northeast corner, and primary aggregate resource, which is approximately 4.2 hectares, bisecting the northern third of property. Our review of the application revealed that the existing residence is located actually within the woodlot and is designated natural resource environment designation. However, section 11.7 of the official plan generally does not permit creation of new lots within this designation. However, other policies provide guidance for considering of consent applications. The OPA proposes to create a site-specific policy, which would be applicable to the subject lands, to permit severance of an existing surplus farm dwelling, which is the one in the northeast corner. In addition to this, the owner has submitted an environmental impact study to support the application precisely because the proposal is in that woodlot area. So the proposed lot would have just over 60-meter frontage at Perth Road 130 and a lot area of 0.3 hectares. The proposed severed lot would contain the existing single detached dwelling, accessory garage, and water and septic services. A survey of the sketch of the proposed lands is shown here on the screen and also is attached in the report. And this concludes the public meeting presentation. I would be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Melissa. Okay, and just before we go on to questions or comments, and Trevor McNeil's going to come on, the warden has erred. I forgot to get the agenda approved for this public meeting. So I'll take full responsibility for that. And I just need a motion to approve the agenda for this public meeting. Councillor Hurlick, Councillor McDermott. Those in favor? Carried. Thank you very much. Okay. Do we have Trevor coming up there? What's that? Yep. And just before we it takes a minute to get Trevor up here. We do have the minutes from the public meeting on June the 2nd. No, May 19th, sorry. Public meeting. If I could have a motion, we could approve those two while we're waiting. Councillor Duncan, Councillor Wilhelm. Any questions on those minutes from the 19th? Those in favor? That's carried. Paramedic. Oh, there's Trevor. Morning, Trevor.
Morning, Warden. Morning, Council.
So we're ready for your delegation here.
Okay, thank you very much. Like you have this morning, lots of paperwork. This summer's turned into lots of paperwork as well. Once we realized that the property had the natural environment area on it and the potential for aggregate in the official plan designation. So what had happened was the aggregate had all been removed from the property when Road 130 was built up many years ago, but we had to do the studies to provide that, which we have supplied with staff with those studies. One with the geotechnical study that the gravel, a little bit of gravel that's left there isn't worth extracting, as well as the natural environment that the existing house lot won't affect any of the wildlife that's in the bush. That house was put in there about 25 to 30 years ago. The idea of the house was to for the Matt and Heather's son to live there, and now he's in Toronto, and they've decided to live there themselves, and they're selling the farm off to another farmer who already has a house on his existing property. So this house is surplus to their needs, and they don't require it. So that's hence the application for the farmhouse severance. The farm building is not there located in the cluster, as Melissa had mentioned, or being used for storage, and will continue to be used for that. There's no more livestock in those buildings, and we've kept the severed lot down to pretty much the minimum requirements to accommodate the septic and the shed and the house that's on that property. As you can tell by the sketch that Melissa showed, there's not very much excess land there. It pretty well covers the buildings plus the setbacks. And free to answer any questions of council or anyone regarding the application.
Perfect. Any questions for Trevor? I thought I saw Doug Eitz, Councilor Eitz hand. Yeah.
Trevor, in this unique situation, there could actually be another farmhouse severance on this, right? Because this isn't really surplus. This was built as a granny home. And then the other house, if whoever buys it could do it again?
Not according to way the surplus farmhouse is written right now, because you're only allowed to sever one house off of the farm parcel. So the house that's with the building cluster would have to remain with that cluster. Unless, Melissa, please correct me if I'm wrong, but that's my understanding of the policy.
That is correct. So I'm not sure whether the retained lot, what will happen in the future. Theoretically, it could maybe be severed, but we just have to see. We can also regulate that through rezoning, because the requirement of this consent and this OPA following this approval, hopefully, there's going to be a requirement to rezone the lands. So we can deal with that at that stage.
Other questions? Councilor Hurley.
Yeah, no, great. Thanks through you, Warden. I just looked at this and I understand we don't have our natural heritage study done. And I noticed it referred to as the 2020 provincial policy statement. So essentially, I think even though our natural heritage study isn't done, are we getting trumped into having to follow some of this legislation from the province, Melissa?
Council Herlick, this requirement actually is coming from the official plan, our current official plan. So, but just because they're severing the house that is designated and zoned as natural heritage, and specifically within a woodlot. And because of that, because they're in close proximity to the woodlot, surrounded by woodlot on all sides, actually, this requirement is already incorporated in the official plan. So hence the requirement for the study. And they have successfully completed it. And the study says that there will be no adverse impact because of the severance.
Okay, and just to follow up there quick, again, now it says we have to prove that there will be no environmental impact on what's going on. So essentially being everything was existing, does it necessitate that study, the impact study? Because essentially all you're doing is going to pound some stakes in the ground and walk out. Everything 100% was existing. So that impact study, as much as we created the lot, would verbal and visual would have been ample in this case, because nothing got changed, as opposed to the whole impact study is where I see the gray area. The more I look at this, laying in bed last night.
That is correct. It's sort of ambiguous. However, the our guidance comes from the provincial policy statement, and PPS essentially defines severances as development. So hence the requirement. Now, this obviously, now that they have done the study, it's to their benefit actually, because any development in the future, they already have the study. So any addition, any shed that needs to be put in place will be easily approved because they have already demonstrated that there's no negative impacts, right? They have already assessed the site. So
okay,
this is.
Okay, that's interesting.
Other questions? Councilor Wilhelm.
Not a question, just a comment. On page 74, it reads the Township of Perth East endorsed the proposed amendment. I believe that should be Township of Perth South.
Correct. My apologies.
Thank you for that correction. I did notice that, thinking I'd moved. Okay, any other questions? And just with reference to that woodlot, I could stand to be corrected, but I believe the owner, M&H Farms, that are severing this house, have actually leased back that woodlot for a number of years, so that absolutely nothing happens to it. So that's a case of, you know, some people want all the woodlot added to the severance. Well, he kept the severance down to an acre, but at least the woodlot part back.
That is correct, yes.
Okay, is there no other questions? Don't see any. I have a motion that Perth County Council receives the report entitled Application for County Official Plan Amendment 205 by M&H Farms, Inc., affecting lands described as Lot 16, Concession 14, Downey Ward, Township of Perth South, 2518 Road, Perth Road 130 for information, and that Perth County receives comments from the public for consideration regarding the official plan amendment number 205 to the County of Perth official plan pertaining to the lands at Lot 16, Concession 14, Downey Ward, Township of Perth South, 2518 Perth Road 130, while reserving the decision to approve at the regular meeting of Perth County Council to be held on June the 2nd, 2022. Do I have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Wilhelm, Councillor Ike. Last chance for questions. Those in favor? And that is approved. Thank you very much. Thanks, Melissa. And I'm assuming we'll have you back here in a relatively short period of time. Okay. There's way too much papers here. So that will conclude our meeting. So I just need a motion to adjourn the public meeting at 9:22 a.m. Moved by Councillor Callum, second by Councillor McKenzie. Those in favor? That is carried. So now we're back into regular council. At 9:22. And I also have to do another motion that regular council reconvene at approximately 9:22 a.m. Moved by Councillor Kassenberg, second by Councillor Wilhelm. Those in favor? Carried. We're getting kind of motion to death here all of a sudden. Okay, so we're going to move on. And next on the agenda is, I believe, CAO office. And I believe Marion's going to do this. And that would be the right to disconnect policy. Actually here.
Yes, you're right.
On a lighter note, Doug, maybe we were very disappointed the Leafs lost in the first round. Tampa sure took care of the top seed in a hurry after that, didn't they? They did. It made the Leafs look a whole lot better than I thought. Now the Rangers. I think they got their hands full this series. Morning, Mary.
Good morning. How are you?
Good, and yourself?
Good.
And we're ready for your report.
Perfect. All right. Well, thanks. Through the warden. Good morning, members of council. The Perth County right to disconnect policy was created in compliance with the provincial legislation that was enacted earlier this year. The policy supports our employees in disconnecting from the workplace, subject to reasonable expectations. For employees who are operationally required to respond during off hours, for example, our management team, our public works employees, our paramedics, the policy does not supersede any existing contracts or collective agreements, but it does provide the assurance that if you are off duty and off work, you wouldn't be contacted for non-essential communications and have someone expecting a response. The policy does benchmark to other right to disconnect policies throughout other municipalities. And as well, it provides some suggestions and tips for employees just in terms of keeping their out of office messages on, making sure that, when you are out of the office, anyone who's coming in to connect with you has somewhere else to go. And overall, the policy will be supported by a communication plan once it is approved by council, just to, again, remind staff and sort of further bring home the idea that, put in your best effort during your work hours. And outside of that, you may have to respond depending on your job, but if it is not essential to your duties, then we would just be expecting you to pick up and continue your work when you resume the next day. Are there any questions?
Questions for Marion on the right to disconnect policy? I'm sure you've all dealt with it at your lower tier as well. Councillor Hurley.
Yeah, no, through you, Warden. I just look at this policy and are we going to have to start, looking at wages? I don't know. It's funny sometimes, oh, they make such and such a wage, but we all know everybody's doing extra. So, it sounds like a lot, but it isn't. So now are we going to actually have to start, really looking at wages and, not be quite so, giving on how much we put out there to hire, knowing that these folks are going to be able to disconnect right away as soon as work's done. And I'm essentially thinking we're going to see more staff, not that I do or don't want to, but if there's legislation, people are going to be shutting it down. So, well, okay, shut it down, but we can't be paying you a little extra knowing that you're always doing the extra. You get what I'm saying?
Aaron, you got a response for that?
Yeah, so just in response, so there are some jobs where it, at the end of the day, a discretional email, there is a time frame that is reasonable for that employee to respond. I do believe, like, for example, and that's where the policy does have its limits for those who are required. So, for example, our managers are provided with a week in lieu of overtime as they do not receive overtime wage. They are still expected, if there is something after hours that is of urgent nature, they are still expected to respond, and the policy does not supersede that.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Councillor Katzenberg.
Thank you, Warden Aitchison. A couple of typos I want to draw attention to on page 66 under the exceptions. The first line should be there, THEIR instead of THERE. The second line in the same paragraph should be extent, not extend. But I do have a question, and it's a question that was raised certainly in the context of North Perth's policy of similar nature. When we advise certain employees that they can disconnect and then say, but there may be times where we need to call on you. There may be some discrepancy or misunderstanding about how that happens, right? And we're essentially assuring them that if they're not in a management position, from what I heard you say, Marianne, although that the policy is not crystal clear to me on that piece, that they can fully disconnect. And if that's the case, then there could be some difficulty in reaching them under those circumstances. Now, I think we understand that there are some emergency circumstances, and maybe we need to define those more carefully in the context of this policy. But there are also some unique circumstances that could arise where there's one person in the organization who has very specific information that is needed, and needed on a somewhat urgent basis, and yet we've told them that they can fully disconnect, so they have no responsibility, as I understand it, to be watching their emails or listening for phone calls from their manager, from others. And I guess that's what kind of leaves me a little bit concerned, puzzled about these policies, is that we're saying, yes, you can fully disconnect, and we're protecting those rights. And if you're in a certain kind of category, which we can define in contractual language or whatever, then okay, we will still connect with you if we need to. But as I said, I think there are some other circumstances that could arise that this policy and its privileges that are granted in it could create some headaches for the organization. Just an observation.
No, 100% and through the warden, I completely agree. Part of the issue with the legislation was the fact that it didn't have a full definition as in terms of what exactly or who exactly this would apply to in practice. And I think that's something that all municipalities have and other organizations have struggled with. I know I used management as an example, but another good example would be public works. If there is a snowplow issue, they're being called in. Now that is part of the operational nature of their job. However, when they're off duty, they're off duty. So according to this policy, you know, there is a bit of a gray area there, but that's where we go back to their contracts in terms of the policy does not supersede any existing piece of contract or collective agreement. The same with our paramedics. When we brought it forward to QP as well, we indicated we recognize the part-time staff are off in between their shifts, but we still will be calling them to provide them with shifts, and it still is their expectation to make sure if they're scheduled, they are checking their availability. So that would be done not necessarily on work time as well.
Deputy Warden Eggets.
I just have a couple comments. I want to make the first one, where does council fall into this? We seem to get emails, nights, weekends. Is this going to pertain to us that people cannot send us emails either? Like,
No.
Wondering, or vice versa. Like I try not to send staff an email outside of working hours unless there's an emergency. So are we going to have the same courtesy? Do we follow under this policy as well?
You wouldn't fall under this policy as this one is geared to employees only. I'm assuming external. I would have to look into external, the contractual rights of council.
Which are basically you're on
Council. Maybe council should be added somehow, but the second one question, I know probably staff have all seen this. Todd had some concerns there. I'm just wondering if Annette has any more comments for legal about what can happen or can't happen, or if we need to add some more things here, or do we have all the bases covered?
Annette?
So through the warden, I'm a big fan of being as specific as possible. And how we propose to deal with that is to create an operating, an SOP to complement this policy. So the policy is broad. From a legal perspective, it does meet the requirements of the legislation. It is broad because there is there's a lot of diversity within each employee's role in the organization. As Mary mentioned, you have public works, but then you also have someone such as the treasurer. So the policy is quite broad. From a legal perspective, as I mentioned, I'm a fan of being as specific as possible. So to complement this policy, we will have a standard operating procedure, which will be a little bit more clear and direct and contain more details.
Other questions? Councillor Kazenberg.
Thank you, Warden. Just sort of one more sort of angle on what I started earlier, if I might, sort of thinking this through. When you look at the exceptions on page 66 of our package, it talks about where an emergency or exigent circumstance arise with or without notice. Likewise, the last bullet point in the exceptions relates to other unusual circumstances, and yet we haven't really defined those. And to me, that's perhaps a little concerning. Do we mean where it says where an emergency exists? Is that a declaration of a state of emergency? Is that what we mean? And likewise, unusual circumstances. What does it mean? And there's opportunity, and I'll just point it out, for an employee to say, this wasn't unusual, or this wasn't an emergency, and therefore I had no obligation. I just want that considered, and maybe it's about definitions. I'm wondering if that's the possible improvement here.
Yeah, we can definitely consider it. Again, it's hard to define an emergency for a broad group of staff because what is considered urgent or an emergency for one is not necessarily for another. And so again, it's more internally focused, working with our management team to get them to understand what is, what is urgent versus what is an emergency. And I think that goes back more to being respectful of people's time outside of the workplace.
Other comments or questions? Councillor Hurley?
No, I've seen similar policies within the construction world where I used to work in management. And again, there just has to be this trust and faith that we know an emergency and what isn't normal within a department. And it does make it difficult when this type of legislation gets pushed through. There's so much gray. And that's the world we seem to be living in general right now. I echo Councillor Kassenberg as well. I worry about lawsuits and potential of. I get stuck myself as well on some of this stuff. And I just want to make that comment. Thank you.
Other comments or questions? Councillor Kellum.
Yes, thank you. Through you, the warden. I believe that the policy needs to be or should be passed by today, June 2nd. So, we're not going to cover all angles at this point. So I suggest that we do pass this policy. And if there are any amendments to be made, we can consider that to move on in the future. But the policy, I believe, is June 2nd, if I'm correct.
Correct, yes.
Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Kellum. And actually, Annette had mentioned an SOP, so there'll be further work to be done on this.
Everything included in the policy meets the required standards under the provincial legislation.
And yes, there's lots of gray areas. You find me one situation in anything where there isn't gray areas. Unless it's election count when the vote's over tonight. But it'll take a little bit more work, but in all honesty, like there's the other way of looking at this is you give your staff some time to disconnect. You also bring them back fresher and more productive. And it also kind of relies on your senior staff and their capabilities and how they deal with their staff. And we've got a great senior management team here now, and I'm sure that this won't be disrespected at this point in time. I'm not going to say that it won't happen in the future, but there is some more work to do, but I think we're in good shape just passing this today. Anyway, I have a motion here. Perth County Council receives the right to disconnect from work report, and that Perth County Council approves the right to disconnect from work policy. Moved by Councillor Kellum. Seconded by Councillor Hurley. Last chance for questions. Those in favor? That's carried unanimously pretty well. Thank you very much, Marion.
All right, thank you.
And we'll see you later. Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, we're going to move on to planning services 7.2.1. And we're going to get Melissa back up here. And that's with regards to OPA 205.
Okay, hello again.
There you go. Thanks, Melissa. So we're ready for the 205 discussion. And it really shouldn't take a whole lot of discussion because we've already been through it.
True.
Anything you want to add?
Do you all see this?
Yep.
Okay. So essentially we're, as you already have the recommendations, but essentially it's to receive the report, and our recommendation is to approve this official plan amendment. I will try to make this as short as possible. So in terms of provincial policy, the report, the proponent has done an environmental impact study, and the study essentially says that, and I'm quoting, the severance of the subject lands and continued use as a residential property will not result in a direct impact to the significant woodland or its functions Indirect impacts are also not anticipated as the proposal does not include a change in land use on the newly created parcel. The OP application to create a specific policy within the woodlot, as this statement says, will not have negative impacts and is thus consistent with the PPS. In terms of official plan policy, the new policy will ensure, because other policies of the official plan, such as 11.5 and 11.55 and 11.7, essentially do not permit severances within like woodlots. This new policy, site-specific policy, which is what OPA 205 is, will permit, will revert back this the designation to 5631, which is the general consent policies for surplus farm dwellings, and the lot will be limited in size. In terms of further work to be done, as a condition of consent, the owner will be required to apply for and obtain a zoning bylaw amendment to rezone the surplus farm dwelling lot to the A1 zone, which is a non-farm residential use. The proposed ZBA as a condition of consent, B3121, will be considered at a future date by the Township of Perth South upon approval of this OPA. The ZBA is also included as a condition of consent. The ZBA will be subject to public circulation and commenting in accordance with Section 34 of the Planning Act. The proposed consent application will be consistent with the applicable policies for severance of surplus farm dwellings and the general consent criteria of the County of Perth official plan. In my opinion, this application represents good planning. Thank you. This concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Melissa. If you could just, yeah, perfect. Any questions for Melissa at this point in time? I don't see any. I have a motion here. Perth County Council receives a report entitled Application for County Official Plan Amendment number 205 by M&H Farms, Inc., affecting lands described as Lot 16, Concession 14, Downey Ward, Township of Perth South, 2518, Perth Road 130 for information, and that Perth County approves the official plan amendment number 205 to the County of Perth official plan pertaining to the lands at Lot 16, Concession 14, Downey Ward, Township of Perth South, 2518, Perth Road 130. Moved by Councillor Wilhelm, seconded by Councillor McDermott. Last chance for questions. Those in favor? And that's carried unanimously. Thank you very much. We're going to move on. Thanks, Melissa.
Thank you.
And now we're moving on to 7.2.2. And I believe that's Suzanne is coming on for that. Oh, there we go. Morning, Susanna.
Morning.
We're ready for the one on West Perth File 2102.
Very good. I'll just share my screen. All right, so this is plan of subdivision WP 21 of 02. Are you able to see the screen, the map?
Yep.
Okay, super. So the legal description is part lot 46, registered plan 339. The public meeting for this file was the last council meeting, May 19th of 2022. So council will be familiar with the application. The location of the property is here, north of Frank Street and west of Blanchard Street in Mitchell. It's fronting on the unopened Nelson Street road allowance. The applicant is a numbered company 2455058, which is owned by Aaron and Michael Van Pelt. This is the subject property, an air photo on the right, and the proposed lot fabric on the left. There are 11 lots proposed. The entire property is just a bit bigger than 1.5 acres. 11 lots are proposed, and the lot areas range between 505 square meters to 634 square meters. The density is 17 units per hectare. The planning report and the studies provided by the applicant are in the council package. The department's recommendation is that this plan of subdivision be approved, subject to the conditions attached. And I'm available for any questions.
Thanks, Susanna. Questions for Susanna on this report? Councillor Kassenberg, yep.
Thank you, Warden Aitchison. So, I mean, what jumps out, of course, in this proposal is that the West Perth Council asked for increased density, and presumably the intent there was to strive towards affordability or attainability of housing in this project and optimum use of the land. I wasn't at West Perth Council meeting when this was discussed, so I'm expressing hypotheses at this point. But I'd like to ask the planner, with regards to that sort of notion around increasing density or addressing head-on the issue of affordability and attainability, which in your report on page 113 of our package indicates that this applicant is below the standards set in the Mitchell official plan. Can you suggest any means by which council can express its interest in seeing more effort made on this file with regards to attainable or affordable housing?
Yes, through you, Warden Aitchison, to Councillor Kassenberg. Yeah, I appreciate the discussion. The review of the attainability is provided in the planning report. And there was a good discussion at the public meeting on May 19th with regards to attainable housing. I think that the West Perth councillors perhaps would like to speak to the discussion at West Perth Council with regards to the direction from West Perth, which was around increased density. So in evaluating the subject, the proposal as submitted for increased density, there is a provision in the West Perth zoning bylaw that second dwelling units are permitted in any single or semi-detached unit. And Michael Van Pelt at the May 19th meeting indicated that that at least one of the purchasers of these lots are proposed to be sold as vacant lots, and the owners of the properties will then be building their own houses. So that at least one of the potential purchasers of the property is proposing a second dwelling unit. So that is the latitude that the application has. You'll also remember at the May 19th meeting that we had discussion about the first phase of this development, which was, I can just share my screen again, which was the Upper Thames Village condo. So it was over here. And in this first phase of the development, there was a fourplex, which is here, which is built here, which the rental units in that fourplex satisfy the requirements for attainable units. All told, with the second phase of this development and the first phase of the development, there are 4 dwelling units, which represent about 10% of the total number of residential units. So that I think those are the comments that I have to offer. There is a possibility of second dwelling units, and perhaps the West Perth councillors might want to offer more comments with regards to the discussion at West Perth.
Thanks, Susanna. Any comments from Councillor Wright or Councillor McKenzie?
I think we as was discussed, I think we kind of covered that at our last public meeting. The one thing you have to keep in mind, as Susanna has said, the intent of Van Pelt's is to sell these as lots, and people will build their own dwellings there. So it's a little hard maybe to put restrictions on Van Pelt at this stage of the game, so late in the procedure. He's gone to all the work, came back with a plan of subdivision. He's already indicated that, yes, there will be probably one semi in this mix. There's no guarantee that there maybe wouldn't be two, or there's maybe no guarantee that there couldn't be 11 through this whole process. And we talked about secondary units. The one thing I would just remind you of is that if we went with 12 lots instead of 11, you're pretty much guaranteed that there will be no secondary units there because of the size of the lot. And I think, as was stated at the last meeting, and I'll let Doug jump in here if he wants, that I think the feeling was that to increase density, if we had 11 lots, if we made 12 lots, we'd have more density. But you maybe have more lots and more houses, but you not necessarily mean that you would have affordability or accountability with that. So I don't know if Doug wants to add any more to that or not.
Well, we went through all this on May 19th. We talked about it. Mike made his presentation. We accepted it as it was because there could be the lots that are reported in the report at $110,000, which I brought out. I had some calls about people wanting them right away. But yeah, like we went through all this on May 19th, and there's probably 20 minutes or half an hour discussion. At council, we always ask if it can be more dense, but with phase 2, the next one that comes up is going to be 21 semis in Mitchell. So that's a very high density. It's just in our next package here. So we accepted this as it was, and we move on.
Okay, Councilor Casper.
I again, I don't know what the trajectory of this development is. From what Councilor Wright just said, it sounds like there may be a phase 3, and that may increase the density of the total package from this developer. Doug, can you sort of nod up and down? Is that the understanding? There's a phase 3?
They did 1 and 2, and then we put that street through, and the property to the west has been sold, and it hasn't come to council. There's another proposal by a developer in Mitchell to build 21, Walter, help me out, 21 semi lots.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, coming up on the next, and it's the same developer group that's doing it. So yeah, there will be higher density on the west part. I already know, I've talked to them.
Okay, so if I may, my question remains, and that is that for these 11 lots, is there a tool that council could use, perhaps by insisting that 2 of these lots are sold for the purposes of semis, that would move us towards our own stated goals around affordable and attainable housing, which according to the planner's report is being missed, at least at this second phase of this project?
I could more comments if you like.
You want to try that one, Susanna?
Sure. So the zoning bylaw makes a differentiation between a second dwelling unit and a semi-detached unit. The second dwelling units are permitted in any single detached or semi-detached building. So the zoning on this property was amended by West Perth Council, so it permits single detached dwellings. It also, the zoning of note also permits a fourplex. However, the fourplex, the lot areas of the proposed lots are not large enough to permit a fourplex. So essentially, the zoning on the property permits single detached dwellings, and then secondary dwelling units are permitted within those single detached dwellings. If council wanted to require semi-detached units on some of the lots, then a zoning bylaw amendment could be required in the conditions by county council to require zoning on some of the lots to provide semis. It's not I mean, it would be a new approach, I believe, for council.
Deputy Warden Higgins.
So I thought in the first phase that this developer did, he addressed some of the issues that are being brought up in here. Did he do multiple units there? He didn't do all singles, correct?
That's right. I could share my screen again if you like.
So he's already done that part. So now he's doing he did it in 2 phases. So the first phase already addressed what is being brought up here this morning. Now he wants to build singles. I'm pretty sure in last council meetings report from May 19th, there's so many pages and I can't just find the page just jumping and looking at it, but I was pretty sure the density of these single detached houses is almost the same density that he used in the first phase. So if that's correct, I think we've had the discussion and I think that we need to move on and let this developer develop.
Any more questions or comments? Councilor Kassenberg, last cry.
Yeah, I don't want to seem too ornery about this. My concern rests still with the Mitchell Ward official plan requesting that 20% of homes be attainable or affordable. And over the 2 phases of this development, and I acknowledge he intends to sell these lots off, but nevertheless, we're kind of wishing and hoping that a couple of those lots will develop in an affordable and attainable way. And we're not actually demanding that there's compliance with the Mitchell Ward official plan's intent, which is that there be 20% of homes being attainable or affordable. The planner's report's quite clear about this, that over the 2 phases, only 10% has been hit. And that's a deficit that I'm concerned about. I'm concerned about this from an affordable and attainable housing perspective, which I think we as a council are all very aware of.
Last crack for comments. Councilor McKenzie.
So I just, just to clarify, we've been talking about 2 different things here, really. We're talking about density and we're talking about affordable housing. We can have more density, but that doesn't necessarily mean we're going to have more affordable housing. And they're 2 different things here. There's, as I said before, there's probably a chance in these houses, even though the developer may or may not end up building them himself. But if there are semis there or secondary units, then these 11 lots could very well turn out to be more affordable than if they're all individual single family dwellings. We just have to get our mind wrapped around the difference between higher density and being affordable.
Agreed. And further to Councilor Wright's comments earlier on, the reason when we had this discussion on the 19th about single lots was the fact they had to be that size, and you were alluding to it earlier. If you went to 12 lots, you were eliminating the prospect of secondary dwellings. Leave it at 11, you have the prospect of secondary dwellings. And in all honesty, if you want some affordable or attainable housing, that's almost the way you're going to get it, is the secondary dwelling on that property. Based on the price of things I've been buying lately. Anyway, any more comments or questions? I have a motion. Perth County Council receives the application for plan of subdivision file WP 21-02. Submitted by 2455058 Ontario Inc. Report affecting lands described as part of Park Lot 46, Registered Plan 339, Reference Plan 44R-5628, Parts 1 and 4, Nelson Street, Mitchell Ward, Municipality of West Perth, and the council approve the application for draft plan of subdivision file WP 21/02 submitted by 2455058 Ontario Inc. affecting lands described as part of Park Lot 46, Registered Plan 339, Reference Plan 44R-5628, Parts 1 and 4, Nelson Street, Mitchell Ward, Municipality of West Perth, subject to the conditions attached in the report. Moved by Councillor McKenzie, seconded by Deputy Warden Eggins. Last chance. Those in favor?
Is there a typo in the, is it part of park or part of part?
It says on here, part of park.
I know, is that correct, park, or should it be part?
Part. Part.
Okay,
Oh, yeah, you're right. I'm just reading what I've got in front of me.
yeah, oh, I
I
know,
thought it seemed strange.
that's fine.
Okay, I have a motion and I have it seconded. Those in favor of that motion? And that is carried. Okay, we're gonna move on to 22099 listable ward official plan amendment /35-650. Now I'll just read them out here. And I think we have Sally for this, right? Morning, Sally.
Good morning, Warden Aitchison and members of council.
We're ready for this official plan amendment 35 for 650 Main Street West.
Wonderful. Can you see my slides?
Yep.
Okay. So as mentioned, this is official plan amendment 35 for the listable ward official plan. And the subject property is 650 Main Street in Listowel. The subject property is noted here by this green star. What I'm showing here is a good section of Listowel showing the aerial photos and sort of the general layout of the town at this point, and the arterial roads, Mitchell Road South and Main Street West. And the zoning is shown here in colors. So yellow is residential. The sort of pink on the left here is highway commercial, and then the core commercial area here. And the blue and in this here is these are institutional uses, institutional zones rather. So the purpose of the amendment that's been applied for is to permit a professional office as an additional use. So what that means is that the official plan designation currently is residential, and that would remain as residential, but a site-specific provision would be added that would permit a professional office on this site. So it wouldn't permit professional offices on any other residential lots, and it wouldn't permit any other commercial uses on this lot other than a professional office. Then what's proposed is a law office. There was an accompanying zoning bylaw amendment as well. And both of these amendments, the official plan and zoning, have been reviewed by North Perth and both put forward, both adopted. Well, the official plan amendment adopted and the zoning bylaw passed at North Perth Council. With a commercial use on the site, if this official plan amendment was approved, it would be subject to site plan control. And site plan control, as you'll all know, is a means of addressing various aspects of a development, such as lighting, drainage, parking, and landscaping, those types of things. This is a photo of the subject property today, showing the single detached dwelling and the excuse me, accessory building in the back. It's like a double door garage there. And you can see that the lot is what we would consider, I guess, a sort of a double lot, like the size of double lot rather, for single detached residential uses. This is a copy of the site plan that's proposed. So looking at Main Street on the top of the sketch there and Havelock Avenue down the side here, the building itself that's proposed would be 2-story, and it's here in the corner with the setbacks from the street itself. And then the parking would sort of take up a good chunk of the remainder of the property, with one loading space here on an angle at the corner of the building. That garage that we saw in the photo, that would remain as an existing and future accessory building. And the owner then would use it for storing things outside of the building and therefore not just outside. And two entrances here, one onto Main Street and one onto Havelock Street to facilitate traffic in both directions and within the site to make sure that sort of smoother movement is possible. The lot itself is about 1,600 square meters. And I wanted to talk about the zoning bylaw amendment a little bit here because I raised a flag earlier today, actually before the meeting, and I've since worked it out. So I wanted to walk council through it. And I think as a matter of process, it's also probably interesting just generally. But you'll note earlier in the presentation, I said that North Perth has considered the official plan amendment and the zoning bylaw amendment, and they have passed the zoning bylaw amendment. And you might question, well, can that occur before the official plan amendment has been passed? And so I'm bringing your attention to this section of the Planning Act, section 24 sub 2, and it talks about amendments and the order that they may occur, and essentially says that that a bylaw can be passed that does not currently conform with the official plan, but would conform if the amendment came into effect. So essentially that's describing the circumstance here where the bylaw, the zoning bylaw amendment that was passed in North Perth doesn't currently match the official plan policies, but if this amendment 35 was to go through, it would match. And so the fail safe here is that if official plan amendment 35 is not passed, then that bylaw does not come into force and effect. And if official plan amendment 35 does pass or become approved, then that zoning bylaw would take for full force and effect. So I wanted to be clear about that. As I said, I did raise some flags earlier today, and I have since narrowed it down and figured out the proper reference here to ensure that the process and the order of things is legitimate. So I'm going to offer now a bit of a summary of my review of the proposed use of a professional office in this residential neighborhood. And it is a redevelopment that's being proposed here, and not only a redevelopment, but also a more intensified use of this property, making more efficient use of some of the public infrastructure and servicing there, and also a more efficient use of land generally within a serviced settlement area, meeting objectives for same in both the official plan and in the provincial policy statement. There were concerns raised by 3 different parties, excuse me, with respect to their opinions or perceptions about incompatibility with this residential neighborhood. And those have been provided to you in the appendices of the report. And they essentially express a shared desire to maintain only residential uses on this particular lot and this block area. So I'm looking specifically at compatibility then, and trying to consider that with, due process or due diligence. And the question that I ask myself is, will the use negatively impact the normal use and enjoyment of the neighboring residential properties? So that's really the heart of the matter that I'm considering. And compatibility or potential negative impacts are generally categorized as noise, dust, odor, vibration, pests. And I would say in this case, considering those circumstances, that the proposed law office at this site or any other professional office that may use the building if it gets established, for instance, would, in the case of a vibration, for instance, or pests, probably be nil, and dust, certainly odor, and with respect to noise, be relatively minor. Being located on an arterial road, I'm not sure why the screen stopped sharing there, but I can bring it back up. My last slide anyway, if it doesn't come back. I'll just carry on, I think. So being on an arterial road, there is already sort of a higher degree of traffic and noise at this particular property. And a variety of other uses noted across the, certainly the first four blocks coming from the core, but also in the neighboring blocks traveling west, where professional offices or institutional uses or higher density residential uses have found a rhythm and compatibility with other residential uses along Main Street, at least at this part of town. And so viewing this and considering compatibility potential issues, then I look also to site plan control as a means of sort of dialing in on that layout and the design features that could be used to optimize compatibility at sort of a finer filter or a finer scale. Certainly things with respect to lighting, location and things like that will be evaluated at the site plan stage. And that is the appropriate tool for that level of scrutiny, I would say, on how the commercial use is implemented should the official plan amendment here permit it. So that brings me to my recommendation to you today to approve the official plan amendment 35, which would then certainly have its appeal period and then subsequent to that appeal period ending. And if no appeals were noted, then both the official plan amendment, the zoning bylaw amendment would be in force, and the proponent could then proceed to site plan control and building permit. So thank you.
Questions for Sally? Councillor McDermott, I believe that is.
Yeah, Sally, wouldn't it have been better to put that building beside the house and then you could have saved the house?
Do you mean it's like sever this lot?
Yeah.
Is that what you mean?
Yeah, like you could have severed the house off the lot and then they could have put the law offices on the severed part. Would that not have worked?
Well, looking at their site plan, and they have 14 employees and they have mapped out the appropriate parking for that use. I think it simply wouldn't have fit on a lot half this size. And one of the letters of objection actually notes another property nearby that could or should, in their opinion, have been considered. And it was approximately 900 square meters, whereas the one that the subject area that or subject property we're looking at here is 1,600. And it looks by the site plan and the excuse me, the building footprint, the parking needs, that that in order to build the law office with the appropriate parking and to create a lot that has flow, they're going to need the 1,600 meters square.
Okay, no, that's fine. Just wondered.
Deputy Warden Nagant's got a hand up.
Yes, while it is nice that we want our businesses to be located in our municipalities, I find it very concerning that here we're taking residential property of residential and turning it into a business in the middle of a residential. You also said it's a double lot. There's big potential for this lot for multiple housing. And here we are turning it into something else. So I think they should go back and talk to the developer. In fact, in Perth East, what we're trying to do now is promote that they build some buildings and they have apartments up above. So they have the business down below and they still have something up above because like I said, the conversation we just had in the last report about housing and everything else, and here we're taking housing out of production.
Other comments? Questions? Don't see any hands up. I have a motion. Perth County Council receives the Listowel Plan Amendment 35-650 Main Street West, Patterson Planning Consultants, Inc., on behalf of Tarbush, Dickey, Giller and Associates professional corporation report, and that Perth County Council approve official plan amendment 35 to the listable official plan. Moved by Councillor Kellum, seconded by Councillor Duncan. Last chance for questions. Councillor Hurlick.
Just a quick comment. No, again, I looked at this intensely myself, and all the talk around affordable and attainable, I see this as a beautiful natural fit for homes and intensification, whereas this office can go in a new industrial builder on the edge. And it's interesting, the conversation and the concerns we have, and then now this is just lickety split. It's just more comments. Thank you.
Councillor Kassenberg, you had your hand up before?
Yeah, thank you, Warden. I think, just briefly, and I absolutely hear what Deputy Warden Eggets has said about this. Me too. I'm very concerned about housing, and of course, this seems like a prime lot where that could happen. There may be some environmental stuff that would have to happen there for development, but nevertheless, it does seem like a prime opportunity, and the contribution of the notion that perhaps apartments above that sort of mixed commercial residential is quite compelling to me in general. I will point out that the current office of this law firm is on the side street that abuts Main and is like 2 lots removed. So they already have a presence immediately in this neighborhood, and from my perspective, therefore, the request isn't out of line, although like you, I think I would prefer to see residential development there if they would so consider. So perhaps at site plan, there could be some consideration. I don't know. But generally, the presence of that firm is already immediately in that neighborhood.
Other comments or questions? We've got a motion on the floor, is moved and seconded. Those in favor of that motion? Just let me count here. That's carried. Perfect. We're going to move on. Thanks, Sally. And next, we're moving on to the application from West Perth again for file 2101. And we need to get Susanna up here.
Hello, Warden Aitchison. Hello.
We're back. So we're back. We're ready for the next file, Susanna.
Sure. So this is also a plan of subdivision. The file number is WP 2101. And there's also a numbered company 789274 Ontario Inc., which is B&S Construction. This is the file that Dave Hannum from Zelenka Priamo spoke to at the beginning of the meeting. So I'll just share my screen. So this is a map of the subject property, of Mitchell. The subject property is located here. It's east of Wimpole Street, between William Street and Park Drive. And the address of the property here is part of Park Lot 17 and Plan 339 in the Mitchell Ward. The public meeting for this file was in February 17th of this year, 2022. This is an air photo of the property. It's 4¼ acres, again, east of Wimpole Street, and Anderson Lane is proposed to be built here between William Street and Park Lane. Here is the lot fabric as applied for. So it's 21 lots and the lot areas are here. So it's 668 meters squared per lot. And then each lot is proposed to have a semi. So the units then, 334 square meters for each semi-detached unit. That results in a density of 25 units per hectare, with each of these lots being built for semis. This is the front elevation as proposed by the developer. At the February 17th County Council meeting, Council provided direction to staff to work with the developer in order to confirm that it was possible to put second dwelling units in each one in 3 to 5 of the semis. The developer has responded by engaging a residential designer and working with a West Perth building official to demonstrate that it's possible to renovate each one of the semis to have a second dwelling unit in the basement of each unit. And this is a sketch that it has been provided to demonstrate that it's possible to accommodate the parking requirements in the driveway of each one of the units. So with that additional work that's being done by the developer, the planning department is recommending that the application be approved with the subject to the draft conditions, the conditions of draft approval that are provided in Schedule A of the County Council package.
Thank you, Susanna. Questions for Susanna on this file? We don't see any hands moving. Okay, I have a motion here. Perth County Council receives the application for plan of subdivision file WP 21/01 by 789274 Ontario Inc. Report, and that Perth County Council approve file WP 21-01 for draft plan of subdivision submitted by 789274 Ontario Inc. for the lands described as Plan 239, part of Park Lot 17, RP 44R 2502, Part 1 RP 45R 3625, Part 1 RP 44R 3901, and Part 2 Mitchell Ward, Municipality of West Perth, subject to the conditions and draft approval listed in Schedule A, which was in the report. Moved by Councillor McKenzie. Seconded by Councillor Height. Last chance for questions. Those in favor? And that's carried. Perfect, we're moving on. Thanks, Susanna. What time is it? We're gonna try and keep going until we get down to the closed session, just to kind of make things move a little quicker here. Okay, corporate services. And the first thing up is Forestry Inspector Report, and that would be Mr. Tyler.
Perfect. So through the warning, in front of council today is the April 2022 Forestry Inspectors Report prepared by Marvin Smith, Forestry Inspector. In the month of April, Marvin completed 12 inspections, 11 in response of the submission of a notice of intent, and 1 which was in response to a request from a potential land buyer. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to take them and pass them off to Marvin.
Any questions on this report from Mr. Smith? Not seeing any hands. I have a motion. Perth County Council receives the April 2022 Forestry Inspectors Report for information. Deputy Warden Eggets, seconded by Councillor Wilhelm. Questions? Those in favor? That's carried. Okay, moving on. Activities report from Stratford Perth Archives for MSSC. And Betty Jo's coming on for that, and there she is. Almost.
Thank you, Warden.
Good morning, Betty Jo.
Good morning. Good morning, council and senior staff. Before I get into my report, and I believe they're on the line as well, I'd like to introduce 3 new members of archives staff. If we could bring in Jen Georgiou, Claire Drake, and Alyssa Cooner, please. Okay, I see Alyssa's coming on there. Yeah. Oh, they're all together. Okay, great. So thanks everyone for your patience with that. So first I'd like to introduce in the middle is Jennifer Georgiou. Jen is the archives technician for cataloging and digitization. She came on board as a permanent member of county staff last year. Jen has a BA in history and a master's of information from the University of Toronto with a specialization in archives. And she has over 7 years of experience working in archives, most recently at Wellington County. So this is kind of an official chance for Jen to come in front of council. And next we have our 2 summer students for this year, Claire Drake. You could just wave. Thanks, Claire. Claire has a Bachelor of Global Business and Digital Arts from the University of Waterloo's Stratford campus. She's currently working towards a Master of Information degree at Dalhousie University for a future career in archives or libraries. And finally, we have Alyssa Cooner. Alyssa has an honors Bachelor of Science degree from the University of Toronto. She's now working towards a Master's of Library and Information Sciences degree from Western to prepare for a career in archives. They have all certainly been putting their skills to use for the county, and I am very proud, not to mention very grateful, to have them on the team here. So thank you all for that. The report that you have today summarizes projects and activities at the archives since the beginning of this year, and will, if approved, be presented to MSSC in 2 weeks as well. Reference service by email or telephone is still very popular, and staff have been busy responding to those kinds of requests throughout the pandemic. Information and photographs from the archives enhance reports and displays at local businesses and community partners like Stratford Perth Museum. Next week, with Claire and Alyssa's assistance, the reading room will be open longer hours each day for drop-in service and in-depth research appointments, including summer Saturdays. That's the first time we've been able to provide that service since 2019. Behind the scenes, we're working on a project to make the archives collection of Perth County newspapers more accessible by scanning them and adding descriptions of them to the PCIN library catalog. New donations of archival records continue to arrive from members of the community and local organizations to be accessioned and cataloged. The report also provides council with some information about public outreach via local history newspaper articles and community talks, along with staff training that's happening so far this year. So thank you all for your time today. Mr. Warden, through you, if there are any questions, I'd certainly be happy to try to respond.
Thank you, Betty Jo. Any questions for Betty Jo on her report? Don't see any hands going up. I have a motion here. Perth County Council receives the activities report from Stratford Perth Archives for MSSC report, and the council approved the report for submission to the MSSC meeting of June the 16th, 2022. Moved by Deputy Warden Agate, seconded by Councillor McDermott. Those in favor? That's carried. Perfect. Thanks, Betty Jo. We're going to move on to financial variance. We need Corey. Come up. Morning, Corey. Oh, there he is. Morning, Corey. We're ready for your report.
Good morning, Warden and Council. So the report in front of you is our Q1 financial variance report. The highlights in this report is essentially we're 25% through the year, but you'll notice that we've indicated that within that 25% over the January to March period, winter maintenance is now, we've already spent 72% of the winter maintenance budget. So under historical percentages, 40% we incur in this November, December of the year. So we're projecting to be 28% over budget. And with that 28%, left with 28%, 12% over budget, which is approximately $400,000. Other items to note there's within the report is that within the other operations, there's no indications of any particular significant variances. And within the capital budgets, to note, historically, we do not get into significant capital value of the program until Q2 to Q3 and 4. Therefore, we've only spent 2% of the capital budgets. But if there's any questions particular to the attachments within the report, I'll be happy to answer them.
Thanks, Corey. Any questions for Corey in his report? Not seeing any hands go up. I have a motion here. Perth County Council receives the 2022 Q1 Financial Variance Report. Moved by Councillor Hurlick, second by Councillor Wilhelm. Those in favor? That is carried. Thanks, Corey.
Through you, Warden. I do want to introduce a new staff member as well as Betty Jo has introduced them as well. I would like to introduce Daniel Hubbard, who is moving into the role of the Senior Financial Analyst, Deputy Treasurer here at the county. He started Monday. It's Thursday. He's still here, which is fantastic. I'll just note that I think he's getting pulled into this room as well. I'll note that he is a significant Leaf fan. So his sorrows have been seen throughout the weeks of his tenure here so far. But I'm going to let it potentially see if he has any comments to bring forward.
Welcome.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I just wanted to say I'm very excited to begin my position here with Perth County. It's been a great first week so far, and I'm excited to get a chance to meet everyone in person. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. We're going to, we'd love to chat longer, but we got lots to do yet, and there's a couple have to get away. So we are now going to move on to the next. And the court services report, POA. Is that Hubbard guy from St. Mary's? Accent. Hubbard guy from St. Mary's.
Good morning, Council. This report is an update on activities at the Provincial Offences Court Office for the first quarter of 2022. Perth County POA continues to hold court appearances remotely by Zoom unless requested in person, in which we can accommodate. The Recovery Secretariat is working with courts across the province to facilitate a province-wide recovery plan after COVID. Just a few key notes. As directed by council, staff are in the midst of researching school bus camera systems. AMO, as a result of the volume of other municipalities interested in this, has a vested interest in the upcoming months to provide information and resources. This will be a cost saving to individual municipalities, and a more detailed report will be provided to council in the near future. This report also includes a 4-year comparison on charges filed and revenue collected. Perth County has returned to historical levels and has seen an increase in the first quarter of 2022. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Anyone with questions for Danette? Don't see any. Yeah, judging by the charges filed, we could have I'd almost have to say a record year.
I think so.
After a quarter.
I think so. They are coming in.
Okay, so I have a motion here. Perth County Council receives the POA Court Services Report for MSSC, an operation update report for information. And Perth County Council approved the report for submission to the MSSC meeting on June the 16th, 2022, moved by Councillor Kazenberg, second by Councillor Wilhelm. Those in favor, that's carried. And we're moving on to the next report.
Thank you, Warden. The purpose of this report is to provide information and an update on the potential download of Part 3 prosecutions currently provided by the province to municipalities. This is part of Bill 177, which is the streamlining of provincial offenses. Currently, municipalities across the province are responsible for the prosecution of Part 1 and Part 2 charges. And the Part 3 charges, which are of a more serious nature, the province provides that prosecution and is paid for by the province. Perth County is set up a little bit differently, and kudos to them. They employ a contract position, Mr. Vaughn, who currently prosecutes all matters, Part 1s, Part 2s, and Part 3s. However, Perth County pays for the Part 1 and 2 prosecutions. The province remains paying for the Part 3 prosecutions. POA staff have attended training to educate themselves for the possible upcoming of this download. And although the legislation has been passed, many municipalities have not accepted to take on this responsibility to date, and only a handful of municipalities have. Ongoing discussions continue to take place throughout the province on this new legislation. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Perfect, thank you. Questions for Danette on this report? No. Is that your hand waving there, Councillor Ehrlich, or? It just looked like, okay, no, just waving no. Okay, I have a motion. Perth County Council receives a potential download of responsibility from the province of Ontario for the prosecution of Part 3 Provincial Offences Act Offences Report. Moved by Councillor McDermott, seconded by Deputy Warden Agus. Those in favor? It's carried. Perfect. We're going to move on. And then next we have.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dana.
Thank you.
Paramedic services, and we've had Mike wander into the room, and he's brought an assistant with him.
Morning, thank you, Warden, and through the Warden, this is our MSSC report that I'm bringing to you for approval to bring to MSSC on June the 16th. And I'll just provide a quick update on some of the highlights, and I'm also going to introduce you to Debbie Hunter while we're going through the report as well. So without further delay, this is our update for this quarter. Our next one will be a more comprehensive half-year update that provides our statistical and key performance indicator update as well. So this one we had the different deputies and as well as Debbie Hunter provide some information based on what's happening within our program. The first one is mobile integrated health. So this is Debbie Hunter. She is our new manager of mobile integrated health. She has joined us about 6 weeks ago, and is here as well to, I would like to introduce her to our council, as well as if there's any questions about MIH, this would be a great opportunity for sure to have a conversation with her, or we can certainly do it offline at any point of given time. So that was our first piece of the MIH section. And as I said, later on in the year, our comprehensive update through MIH will actually also come out through both the MSSC, and there'll be an independent report as well. And so you will have the opportunity to see Debbie present to you later in the year. Part 2 of this report, or second part of this report, is the training and education. So I just provide a highlight of some of the things that are happening with training. Particular potential interest is we included in here some of the topics that we'll be covering this year, which is neonatal resuscitation, farm safety, drowning, trauma, like those types of things that you might see. And this is an example of how we do continuous training throughout the year and on a repetitive cycle over the course of several years as well, to make sure that all of our paramedics are at their sharpest. The next one is operations and COVID-19. So a general update here. In our first quarter, we responded to 2,564 emergency calls, which is slightly up from the year previous. We continue to operate within the context of a pandemic, while a lot of the measures in the community have been lifted in accordance to public health. We do have, we are still actively responding to persons that either have COVID or we do have from time to time staff ending up in isolation or contracting COVID themselves. So we continue to manage that, and it does continue to be a stress and a strain to the paramedic services. We just don't want to forget that at this point in time. PPE continues to we have no issues. We are able to procure that. So we are able to continue to operate within the context of the pandemic. And the last thing I just want to mention on that is that we're working on developing a transition plan, and we have some frontline paramedics providing input and are engaged in developing that plan. And it will be a guidance document so that we remember the lessons of COVID-19 in Perth County and for paramedic services, but that we also look at some opportunities of things that we need to continue to do. And we will bring a summary report to council likely by the end of this year. The next thing was the Ministry of Health ambulance service review. So I'm pleased to say that the Ministry of Health comes in and does a service review, which allows us to operate the ambulance service and is on a 3-year cycle. It's a modified version of this because of COVID-19, but we did receive accreditation or certification in the preliminary review. And I can bring, once they produce their final report, we can certainly discuss that further in council and beyond. The Ministry of Municipal Affairs, Housing Municipal Modernization Program update. So the main thing that we're focusing on is the CADLink project, which I've discussed before in council. The connectivity of ambulances to dispatch is, in my opinion, super paramount because it provides more timely information. And we were able to obtain funding through this modernization fund. We have a bit of a slowdown right now just because we're procuring actual parts to go into our ambulances. And like everything else, there's a electronic microchip delays, but we are moving that along, and I don't feel that there's any issues in terms of any risk of losing out on that equipment prior to the September deadline, because we are expecting to receive that within the next month or two. The other part to that was we had originally put forward funding through this same program that we will be sending back because it's actually funded now through the long-term care funding that we've received, and at 100% versus only a fraction or portion through the municipal services one. So that was just a small amount of funding, and it's just being funded by a different government stream, and we didn't want to double dip, so we are just going with the one over the other, and the one that is an advantage to the county. Vehicle order update. The 3 SUVs that we did order for the Mobile Integrated Health Program have been built, and we're just waiting on delivery. So we're expecting within the next month. We are going to be looking at bringing a report to council for your awareness to order our 2023 ambulances early, because not only has it been a 1-year delay, now we're hearing that it may even be a 2-year delay. So we want to get ahead of the curve on that and make sure that we can continue to replace our vehicles as within their replacement cycle. So we will be bringing a report forward with respect to that. We also will be bringing a report forward with respect to replacing our 2 SUVs, or our 2 pickup trucks, I should say, which are supervisor vehicles that drive around and support operations on a daily basis. And so those vehicles, we are looking at options right now, and we'll be putting either putting an RFT out or coming back to council and having further discussion on that as required. The new paramedics, we hired 15 and new paramedics, and we're real pleased with that number. And in fact, we actually recruited 2 paramedics to full-time permanent positions in our Mobile Integrated Health Program from outside our service. And actually including Debbie would be our 3rd, because Debbie was working for London Paramedic Services previously as a commander there. So we're real pleased that we were able to do that. Our deployment review, so the work that went on with Oxford and Elgin County, that is moving forward. I am personally working on a terms of reference for that committee to see what it would look like, and I will bring that back to council in the future. I know that they are recruiting for a chief in Elgin County, so that should take place within the next couple of months, and look forward towards further work in that area. Aside from the terms of reference, no further work has happened though in that area at this point. But we will continue to meet together as the chiefs, and we will get that committee up and running. Labor relations, we will be discussing our mandates and how our QP negotiations are going later in closed session, because labor relations matter, as you're aware. And but I would like to report that they are amicable and that those are continuing. Aside from that, that was the extent of my report, and would certainly, Warden, open the floor to any questions for myself or for Debbie.
Thank you very much. Well, first off, welcome aboard, Debbie.
Thank you.
Hopefully you don't have to drive from London every day with $2 and whatever it is.
I grew up in this area, so it's super nice to be back and to have like familiar faces around and great contacts. And I am really passionate about this program. We all know like how much of a need there is for this sort of support in the community. And I really have been working hard at getting to know our partners and who we're working with, so that we can like progress forward quickly and see sort of where we can fit in. And like Chief Adair said, I'm open to any conversations or ideas that you have. The program has like a broad range of access that we have to stuff and training. So if there's ideas or areas that you have of concern, we're happy to sit down and chat and kind of work through that collectively.
Perfect. You sound like a great addition. And Mike will attest that he'll probably be getting a call from me every once in a while, because I like to chat about things.
Please, yeah.
Periodically.
Yeah, no, that would be great.
Mike and I have had some feelings about different things all the way from this paramedicine program. I know I sent him a couple articles on it. Where other areas we're trying to roll it out using doctors. Niagara and the Lake to be one. And I said to Mike, "Look from there, like we're kind of miles ahead of them on it."
Very much so.
Anyway, it's a great program, and hopefully we can do some further things with other areas like mental health and whatnot down the road, and it may all build into one at some point in time.
Very hopeful.
Anyway, questions for either Mike or Debbie? Don't see any hands. Good reports. Okay, I have a motion. Perth County Council receives the Paramedic Services Update / Municipal Shared Services Committee on June 22nd report. And the Perth County Council approves the same report to be presented at the Municipal Shared Services Committee meeting, excuse me, on June 16th, 2022. Moved by Councillor Kellum, second by Councillor Wilhelm. Those in favor? Approved. Perfect. Gonna move on. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'll be back later.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
And if anytime you want to ask me a question, Mike has my number.
Wonderful, thank you.
Okay, Public Works. Got John coming up. Morning, John.
Good morning, Warden Aitchison, and good morning, Council. This report is the tender results for the repairs to the flat roof at Paramedic Services headquarters. And at budget time, we had indicated that the estimate was likely a little light, as material costs, pardon the pun, have gone through the roof during the pandemic. Prior to issuing the tender, we had a roofing consultant take another look at the HQ roof, and it was noted that the damaged areas had expanded over the winter time. That additional area was added to the scope of work, and a tender issued on April 26th. We received 2 bids, and both companies had successfully performed roofing projects for the county over the past 2 years. The low bid was $100,886 from Atlas Apex Roofing Inc. We reviewed those bids with the roofing consultant, who suggested that given the expanded area to be repaired and the increase in roofing materials, the bid from Atlas Apex was reflective of the current market. Prices for this repair are not likely to decrease, and the repairs are imperative to mitigate further damage in a more costly restoration. Staff are recommending awarding the contract to Atlas Apex Roofing Inc. and additional funds for the project would be financed from the facilities reserve. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
All right, thanks, John. Any questions for John on this report? Councillor W. Warden Miggets.
We're awarding it to, they're not the company that did the roof originally, correct? Or who did it?
That's correct. This company did repairs to the Mitchell Paramedic Services base last year.
Right. So just as a reminder, how old is this roof?
6 years old.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, thanks.
I hear your concerns. I'm sure we all do. It's unfortunate the building's 6 years old and we've already got an issue with the roof. But you've heard me say this before, especially John, I can't ever for the life of me figure out why somebody would put up a flat roof on a building. It's just all it is further expense. Anyway, no questions for John? I've got a motion. Perth County Council receives the tender results, PSHQ roof repairs report. And the council award the contract for the Paramedic Services Headquarters roof repairs to Atlas Apex Roofing, Inc. in the amount of $100,886 plus HST, and that the warden and county clerk be authorized to execute the agreement and fix their signature there too. Moved by Councillor Duncan, second by Councillor McDermott. Those in favor? That's carried. We're moving on. Thanks, John.
Thank you.
And next, council reports. Do we have any of those? Bylaws. I do have a bylaw here. And that is with regards to OPA 205, which we just approved here a brief time ago. And that is the bylaw 3380-2022 be read a first, second, and third time and finally passed the second day of June 2022. Moved by Councillor Wilhelm, seconded by Councillor Kazenberg. Those in favor? And that's carried. Perfect. Do we have any notice of motions? Not that I'm aware of. Other business? Announcements? Okay, then we will be moving into closed session. And that will be for a matter pertaining to labor relations, a matter before administrative tribunal, and a matter pertaining to solicitor advice / litigation re public works. And that will be at 10:52, moved by Councillor McKenzie, second by Councillor Hurlick. Those in favor? That's carried. So we're in closed session. Don't have much left here. Number one being the confirmatory bylaw. You are recording, right, Sean?
Correct.
Okay, bylaw 3881-2022, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council of the corporation of the county of Perth at its regular meeting held June 2nd, 2022 is ready first, second, and third time and finally passed on June 2nd, 2022. Moved by Councillor Duncan, second by Councillor McDermott. Those in favor? That's carried. And last but not least, we have a motion that the council meeting be adjourned at 12:00. Moved by Councillor Wilhelm, second by Councillor Kazenberg. Those in favor? And that is carried. Thank you.